the first question. What's the distinction or overlap on a practical level between Chitta and Dhammas in the Satipatthana?
Well, really, practicing the 4 Satipatthanas, 4 foundations of mindfulness, they all emerge out of each other. They're all linked to each other and emerge out of each other. They're not separate. But for teaching purposes and to help us get an overview and understanding of how to practice, well, the Buddha put them into 4 different areas, different focuses for mindfulness: body, feelings, the mind, and then Dhammas. But this term Dhammas with a small d really covers everything. So body, mind, feeling fit within Dhamma. It's everything. But because it means everything, it means you have to be ready to contemplate everything as Dhamma, which is not easy. So you might call it the advanced stage of Satipatthana, if we're speaking realistically. The Buddha encouraged us to begin with the body because that's more doable, more practical as a starting point. Anapanasati, for instance, mindfulness of breathing, the postures, the 32 parts of the body, corpse meditations, begin there. And I once asked Luang Por Tate, who was considered an arahant, I said, can you move on to the other foundations of mindfulness and leave mindfulness of the body behind? He said, no, don't do that. Focus on mindfulness of the body first, and all the other aspects of the other 3 foundations of mindfulness will come out of that. They'll emerge out of it. You need to make your mindfulness directed to the body very solid, continuous first. Then, quite naturally, you'll become much more aware and attuned to feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or painful, and neither pleasant nor painful feeling. And then to the mind. Mind we know through, the objects of mind, the moods, the mental states, wholesome or not wholesome, greed, anger, delusion, or non-greed, non-anger, non-delusion, and all the variations, different mental states you can experience. But the mind is invisible and is very fast, and mental states change very fast. So your mindfulness and your insight has to already be quite well established to really catch the changing nature, the impermanent nature, and the lack of self in mental states. Doesn't mean to say you can't practice mindfulness directed to the citta, to the mind, straight off, but you shouldn't neglect the body, because you'll actually get stronger mindfulness by directing your mind to be mindful of the body first. As far as mindfulness of Dhammas, that's covering everything, because it's really only the arahant who has fully perfected this fourth foundation of mindfulness. And it means everything. So how suffering arises, so how the hindrances arise and block samadhi, how to abandon hindrances. The paticca samuppada in forward order, how suffering arises from ignorance, conditioning, sankharas, vijnana, namarupa, and so on. How suffering arises through the different causal process, and then in reverse order, how suffering ends. And that covers everything, every aspect of a human being, the physical aspect, the mental aspect, and also the relationships between things. Everything is covered with Dhammas, so it's literally everything. So you could say only the arahant has really perfected the 4th foundation of mindfulness. Not that we can't contemplate it, read about it, think about it, contemplate it, but just be aware to be fully mindful of the beginning of suffering, its cause, and then the end of suffering, its cessation. We may not be fully mindful of that yet, only an arahant will. So just keep that in perspective. But the link between citta and Dhamma is clear, isn't it? You identify with mental states as self, you'll suffer. So the Dhamma, reflection on Dhamma is kind of showing you the process of how that happens in the actual practice of mindfulness and meditation, directing your mind to know mental states. It's an exercise at first, just to know your mental state. You may not yet fully grasp the relationship between the arising and cessation of suffering, but you may train yourself just to know what is the mental state at this moment. Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? What is its nature? How does it arise? How does it end? You can do that as an exercise until you're really good at it, and then expand to understand the arising and cessation of suffering, the bigger picture, you might say, in all phenomena.
Sadhu, Lumpur. The next question. Does Ajahn know any stories about Somdet Loon of Nakhon Cham Pasak, Laos?
Short answer is no. If you know his name and where he lived, you probably have access to some kind of literature or internet facts about him, so I would keep researching. If I come up with anything over the next few weeks, I'll maybe tell a story, but at the moment I don't have any.
Sadhu, Lumpur. The next question. If all phenomena is anatta and inherently empty, including intention, does that mean there is no free will? If all life is like an image flashed on a screen and also empty, and our own personal sensory experience coming into the knowing element is entirely unique, could you say we are inherently alone? How do we even know other people exist? When an arahant attains, the chitta goes quiet, but the khandhas go on functioning. Are they involved pushing them around, so to speak, or do they function independently or something in between?
There's a lot in that question, isn't there, to answer in a short period of time. Obviously, the insight into anatta is something you can see quite quickly when you, in simple ways, like, say, I was talking earlier about hair, say, if you cut your hair or a hair drops off, you can reflect, this hair is not self, because now it's gone. You let it go. So in some ways we can get a sort of quick, superficial insight into not self, or if you have you reflect on the way a thought is prompted by something. You meet your friend, they tell you something, you react and start thinking in a certain way. You can say, oh, it's not self, it's because of that person telling me, now I think of this. Sometimes you can sort of reason and reflect on thoughts, feelings, mental activity as not self, and it seems clear. But really, as a deep insight that liberates you from attachment and wrong view, well, it is a deep insight. It's something that comes through a lot of practice. It's not something you can do just like that, just reading or listening. You have to really meditate and develop strong mindfulness and reflect over and over again. So when you say there's no free will, well, yes and no. You could say, well, if everything is anatta, not self, not to be taken as self, well, there's no one doing anything. You could say that, but that's, as I say, a very advanced insight. On a normal level, the practical level, the conventional level, we say, well, there is a self, and if we are experiencing suffering, we want to get out of this suffering, we have to do certain things. So you have the will, the desire to practice the Dhamma, to get beyond suffering. So you're using your will in that way. But on the higher level, which will gradually be revealed through the practice, I would suggest, the sense of self starts to dissolve, disappear. you start to experience more what we call emptiness, then you realize that it's just a natural wisdom of them that can be developed when you see things clearly, and there's no self involved. It's just suffering is obviously something to be abandoned and prevented and abandoned. Non-suffering is something to be experienced, developed. Ultimately, it's not free will, it's just the correct way in line with nature to clear away delusion and ignorance until all suffering is gone. But while you're doing it, to use the idea of a self who is practicing the Dhamma, cultivating the path, has will, it's a useful tool. But ultimately you will abandon that tool. It's like we say the Dhamma practice, we're using a raft to cross the ocean of suffering. When you get to the other shore, the shore of freedom, you could say emptiness, you don't need the raft. You can leave the raft behind. You don't need to carry it on your shoulders now. It's like that. So we use will until we no longer need it. So how do we even know other people exist? And are we inherently alone? Well, I think you probably could say that once you're seeing not self and abandoning the view of self and seeing not self, then you could say you become alone. However, because the mind is wholesome, full of wisdom, it also becomes full of compassion. So being alone does not mean being lonely or suffering. So the Arahant is alone, and they know that, but they're not suffering with it. And that's different from the world where we usually associate being alone with being lonely, depressed, suffering, and so on. The Arahant lives in the world. They no longer make karma, but they still have a body, and they can speak usually. They can think, speak, do things. So usually the Arahant expresses compassion, helping people, teaching the Dhamma, encouraging people to do more good and to practice the Buddhist path. But there's no self anymore for the Arahant, so there's no karma, there's no will making karma anymore. Any actions of the Arahant are just expressions of wisdom and compassion, and there's no attachment. So it's like as if the citta is still peaceful, and then there's the khandhas which are just functioning, doing what seems wise and compassionate, but there's no attachment there. So if the Arahant reaches the point where the khandhas no longer work, well, there's no suffering with fear of death or the end of life. It's just accepting, oh, khandhas no longer work, I'm ill or I'm injured, I'm going to die. There's just an acceptance of that without suffering. Different from an ordinary unenlightened person.
Sadhu. Lumpur. The next question. What are some good tips when going to live in the forest? For example, some monks say don't go to the toilet at the base of large trees in case there are devas living in them.
Correct. Many large trees are considered to have devas and other beings living in them. So maybe not suitable as toilets, better to find an open area away from the tree. Monks have rules about, where to go to toilet, how to go to toilet, and we shouldn't go to the toilet in water, on plants, living plants. You have to think about things as a monk living in the forest, because you could disturb the environment, the physical environment. What you normally do as a monk traveling or camping in the forest, you designate a spot. If you've got lay people helping you, designate a spot and get them to dig a pit toilet in that designated spot, and then you use that spot to go to the toilet, to put rubbish and so on. That's usually the best way to deal with this thing, rather than going anywhere without thinking about it, without choosing. Another practical thing is if you keep going to the toilet at the foot of a big tree, it's quite often big trees drop branches, so it could actually be risky. So I've encountered that before. I once made a camp, not a toilet, but a camp at the base of a massive tree in the jungle in Thailand. And sure enough, one night the monkeys came and were playing around on top, and a massive branch dropped right down on where I was sleeping. I was at the foot of the tree, and I just lay down to have a rest, and I heard the monkeys in the tree, I heard the crack. So I came out of my sleepy state and immediately sat up, and this huge branch came down where my head had been and would have crushed my head, probably killed me. But luckily I'd sat up, so I avoided it. It avoided me. So the foot of a tree is not good for many things. Not good for going to the toilet, not good for sleeping. Better to move a little bit away where you're not going to get things drop on you, animals or trees. And also pick one spot and just stick to it, and then all the other beings in the forest will know this is your toilet spot, rather than going to the toilet all over the place. Not a good idea.
Sadhu Lumpur, we have a raised hand. You may ask your question.
Hi, Lumpur. Good to see you again.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I've got two questions. Maybe to clarify more on directionally whether I'm on the right path. So the first one being, I'm just sort of like weighing the idea of unwholesome mental states. And actually, in there, it includes.
Sorry, we've lost you. Can't hear you.
Not useful, or are there doubts that are just, permissible and part that's useful in the practice?
Sorry, I lost half of the question. I couldn't hear.
Sorry. Okay, I was. Is this better now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I was wondering whether doubt in the scriptures is being talked about as an unuseful or unwholesome mental state. So is there room for doubt, or is doubt ever useful? Or is all skepticism just something that you should, when one notices it, you should just sort of like drop it?
Well, I think you have to distinguish between different kinds of doubt. Useful doubt, obstructive doubt, useless doubt. So doubt here as a hindrance, say in the practice of meditation, is doubt that literally stops you putting effort into being mindful of an object. So the doubt that says, I can't do this, or this is too difficult for me, this is not right for me, or what's the point of doing this, or I don't believe in the Buddha or the Dhamma or the Sangha, or I don't believe in the power of meditation to help me, whatever. Doubt in that sense is something to be known and then abandoned quickly, because it will stop you doing anything good, whether it's stop you meditating, stop you offering dana and helping someone, stop you forgiving someone who's annoyed you, so you carry on being angry and so on. It stops you doing good. But then the other doubts are more reasonable, and it's like, I don't know what nibbana really is like or what it means. I don't know what the peaceful mind is like yet, because I haven't experienced it, I don't think. But those kind of doubts you can live with, can't you? You say, I don't know, and you just put it to one side. But it doesn't stop you meditating or stop you practicing. It just being reasonable, honest, and saying, well, there are certain things I don't know yet. And often those kinds of doubts, the reason you can live with them and carry on with them, just putting them to one side, is because you base your practice on what you do know so far. You've heard the teachings of the Buddha, and some things you've practiced already, and they have become true, and you've verified them. Offering dana is a good thing. It makes me feel happy, it helps other people, it reduces some of my attachment. I can see something good in this. meditation. I haven't experienced jhana or nibbana yet, but when I meditate, sometimes my mind becomes more clear, more peaceful. I can see maybe if I keep practicing, it will grow and improve. So then you say, well, I don't yet know what jhana or Maggaphala Nibbana is all about yet, but I can see what I have practiced so far is good. And you can build up your practice in that way, living with doubt, having some doubt, and it doesn't bother you. But doubt that leads you to stop practicing or not practice in the first place, that's where you have to be careful, because it will stop you doing good things.
Right.
And in looking at, saying, sometimes it's good to see what is the opposite of doubt. Well, when you're practicing meditation, we talk about the 5 factors of samadhi: vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekaggata. Vitakka is lifting your mind to the object, or lifting the object up to your mind. Vichara is sustaining attention on the object. Piti is rapture. Sukha is pleasure, contentment. Ekaggata is one-pointedness. These are the 5 factors of samadhi. Vitakka, what stops vitakka from arising is doubt. If you doubt about the meditation object, you're not even going to put attention on it. You're not going to try. If you doubt about the teacher or the method, you doubt about yourself, your ability to do it, you're not going to try, are you? It's too hard, or it's not for me, I'm not the right one, I can't do this. So that kind of doubt is very important to recognize and start letting go of, overcoming through effort, through putting effort into your mindfulness practice, and particularly into formal meditation, because when you put effort into being mindful, say, of the breathing, this you would say is the practice of vitakka. Once you're doing it for a few times and your mindfulness and your effort becomes more continuous, then you learn something, don't you? You say, oh, I can do this. Oh, I feel more peaceful. Then you're more willing to carry on. Then the doubts disappear because you're now sustaining your effort on the meditation object. So if you want to see doubt disappear, do some formal meditation, sitting or walking meditation. Doubt will disappear very quickly. Doesn't mean to say you're enlightened, obviously, but doubts, the sort of doubts that stop you practicing, will disappear.
Thank you for clarifying. It's very useful.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. I have a scale in my mind that when someone is very supportive and very kind to me, I feel like offering more back to him. Whereas, when someone else is not so close with me, or we just maintain an okay relationship, then I also can offer him less. I wonder if this is wise evaluation, or just me being not kind, nor generous enough.
These are all hymns. What about the hers in the world? Well, yeah, you have to look at it and see where you may be clinging to, like you say, giving a certain value to a person because they've helped you, and so you want to help them and give things to them. Someone else you feel hasn't helped you, so you give less value to them. As your mind becomes more developed, particularly the practice of the 4 Brahma Viharas more developed, kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. Sometimes you're less picky and choosy about who you help, but the way you help people may vary also, because you learn, don't you? You learn, maybe there's a reason. If you're in a relationship with someone, you're just okay with them, they don't help you much, you don't help them much, maybe that's a sign you don't need to help them much. Maybe there's not much connection, or they don't like you much, or they're not able to help you, or you're not able to help them. There may be reasons for that. But if there's a reason to help them that comes up, well, maybe take it. I would say, as a rule of thumb, helping people generally there's always more we can do. And so one area you may develop more in your practice is those people you don't help very much, but you could help more. So maybe someone asks you for help. You think, why should I help this guy? They never help me. Maybe teach yourself in that moment, say, okay, this guy who never helps me, this is the time I'm going to help them, whatever. Doesn't matter that they've never helped me, I'm just going to do it because it's a good thing and I can do it, so I'm going to do it. This is the kind of bodhisattva approach. If we're going to sit and kind of judge it all and say, I'm only going to help those people who help me, well, you're never going to get very far in reducing your attachments, your selfishness, because you're always limiting yourself. Sometimes you have to, go beyond your limits and just say, whatever, I'm going to help them. Even that dog that barks at you and bites you and really gives you a hard time, I'm still going to feed it. That person who really gives you trouble at work, I'm still going to give them a cake on their birthday or something, whatever. That's the whole point. Sometimes you teach yourself to help and do things that are good at the very time when you would rather not, when you're limited, when you're attached in some way, you're annoyed, you don't care. That's the very time to do the opposite. So it can be quite a useful practice. That doesn't mean to say you neglect the people who have helped you and you really want to give something back. Of course, you carry on doing that, but that usually is quite easy and natural to you. Whereas if you really want to reduce some of your attachments, maybe you have to help those people you don't really want to help. You'll learn something there. But we're just generalizing here. I think you also have to look at each situation, each person, and see what's appropriate as well, and it may vary.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. If throughout a day I interact with many people, from colleagues, students to family members, I tend to have many proliferations at night or during sleep. This usually isn't peaceful nor pleasant. I wonder how I can minimize this to happen.
Maybe reflect wisely before you go to sleep. You've interacted with all these people, you wish them well, you've done what you could for today, because today is ending now, there's nothing more you can do today. Maybe you set your goal, tomorrow if I interact again, I'll try and do the best I can for them, but for now it's time to let go because the day is ending and there's nothing more I can do. You find some skillful way to let go of the past, so you're not doubting, worrying, thinking all these thoughts, holding on to all these thoughts. Sure, images and memories come up, but just treat them as just functions of the mind. You don't have to give too much importance to them. They come up, you let them go. Don't keep worrying about people that you can't help or can't influence. Don't keep dragging the past around with you like a heavy weight. Feel the lightness of letting go, and that doesn't mean to say you can't help people again tomorrow. It just means at the moment you're letting go. Trust in that. Trust in the letting go, not taking ownership of everyone's business and everyone's stuff. So when those thoughts and memories do come up, they don't bother you much. You just say, oh yeah, of course, I helped that person, I talked to that person. You have images, you have memories, but then just let them go. Don't hold on to them.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. Dear Lompo, I find myself enjoying the feelings of joy that arise during metta meditation, to the point where I feel quite attached to them. As a result, I feel little motivation to practice other forms of meditation. May I ask for your guidance on how to work with this and whether is this okay?
Well, sounds good, because any meditation object, when things are working, you're mindful more continuously, you're letting go of hindrances, unwholesome states of mind, you will feel better. Your body relaxes, your mind relaxes, you feel more joy. So that's probably correct and good thing. But as you've noted, it can become a basis for attachment. You crave the joy, You cling to it, you want it to stay, you don't want to lose it. And when you do lose it, you want it back again. So be aware of the impermanence. Like metta is to be practiced with panya, wisdom. So having done your metta meditation for a while, I would recommend doing some contemplation, including contemplating the very nature of that metta, the state of mind, the feelings that come with it, to see that these are still conditions that arise and cease. These are still conditions that are not self. Otherwise, there is a tendency to create a self. I am the one with metta. You become a special metta person or whatever. You start creating something out of it, and that's the basis for suffering. So the antidote to that is contemplate the impermanence, the not self of it. It doesn't mean to say you stop practicing or stop cultivating metta, but you reflect on the dangers of attachment and start letting go.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. My sister has a very greedy and stupid personality, also with bad temper ever since she was little. She is now in her late 50s, but she has only got worse. Each time when I see the way she behaves, I really don't know what to say. It's difficult for me not to look down on her unskillful mindsets and behaviors. How to not looking down on somebody when they behave so badly throughout her whole life and never try to improve herself. I know Ajahn might suggest metta, but it's just not the thing that I can develop towards her, especially when she also enjoys bullying and taking advantage of me.
Well, there's a number of things to reflect, not just metta, but maybe compassion. If she's doing a lot of unskillful things and has been repeatedly through her life, she's going to suffer. She is suffering already, and she'll suffer in the future, and that's worthy of compassion. But if she's a bully and causes you trouble, well, maybe you have to keep your distance. So it's compassion from a distance, and then some equanimity as well. You reflect, well, there's maybe not much you can do about her character, her habits. You have to just accept that fact, and you wish her well. You hope that she's free from suffering, but you also can see maybe she has patterns of behavior that are just repeated. So you just have to go equanimous and accept it, be at peace with this situation if you can't change it. And I would come back to yourself, ask yourself, do I have those qualities? Am I stupid? Am I selfish and greedy? Am I a bully? Ask yourself those questions. Try and root out those qualities from your own actions, your own intentions. And even that will subtly help your sister, any interaction you have. If the more you are practicing, the better example and the better you will be for her. And maybe as you practice more yourself and root out these negative qualities from your own behavior, the more insight you'll have that you can maybe one day pass on to her. When that will be, I don't know. And sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's slower. But I would always suggest coming back to yourself, practicing for yourself. And you've got to practice for yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. And ultimately, your sister's got to learn as well. Maybe she's a slow learner, I don't know. So if she's a slow learner, you have compassion for her because she's still got a lot more suffering to go through. But focus on yourself. You're the one you can change. Focus there. And wish your sister well, but maybe don't spend too much time thinking about it because there's not a lot you can do.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. Hello Ajahn. Is it possible to become enlightened without jhana?
Strictly speaking, you could probably say no, but leading up to that point of enlightenment, you don't necessarily have to rely on jhana all the time. We talk about different kinds of samadhi. These are from the commentaries, not so much from the word of the Buddha, but I think they were implied from the suttas. We talk about momentary concentration, khanika samadhi, access concentration just before jhana, which is upajjhara samadhi, where the hindrances have passed and one can contemplate, practice vipassana, and then jhana and the different stages of jhana. And actually the kind of active layer of samadhi where you're really contemplating the three characteristics, letting go of greed, anger and delusion, is upajjhara samadhi, khanika and upajjhara samadhi. That's where you do all your work. In jhana is like the booster and the charger to get the power, to get the continuity of mindfulness, the purity of mindfulness from the jhana, which is important. But all this hard work is done in upajjhara samadhi. So I would work on more simple goals rather than thinking of jhana. I'd just say, are the hindrances, these 5 hindrances, present or not? If they are, how can I abandon them? And they'll come up one after another. Learn how to abandon the hindrances. When you've abandoned the hindrances, your mind will be more calm, the mindfulness more continuous. Then you can direct your mind to contemplate the 3 characteristics in your 5 khandhas better. So I tend to approach in this way, a more simple, direct way. But this isn't to say jhana isn't important, it's just to say it can be a distraction, especially in the beginning of the practice. People think too much about it and worry too much about it. I would work more on, is my mind peaceful yet, or are the hindrances still doing their thing? And let go of those hindrances as best you can, as quick as you can.
Sadhu. Lumpur. The next question. Dear Lumpur, thank you for your teaching. I have noticed that contemplating the body does not make me feel aversion. Indeed, I find old and even dying bodies still beautiful and humbling. Caring for my dying partner, I found his bodily fluids not repulsive. Holding his dead body, even 6 days after his death, I felt love for each finger, hair, etc. I was trying to contemplate his body, but I guess my attachment was and remains strong. Contemplation of my body brings me back to grief for him and more suffering. I am trying to stay with it. Could you advise me on how to stay with the overwhelming pain, which can sometimes feel like a deep sense of panic? Sadhu.
Well, there's a few things you've talked about. Maybe try and separate between mind and body in your thinking and the way you're viewing this whole thing. So, your partner, obviously you loved your partner, so then the love was foremost in your mind, which helps to cushion when you're caring for them, or even when you're with the corpse of your partner, you don't feel aversion because of the love. That's really the love of the person in terms of the good that they've done, the relationship to you, more than I would say the physical form. The physical form is always going to get old, sick, die, degenerate back to the 4 elements. That can't change, whether it's someone you know, someone you love, or someone you hate. That's just the way it is. So that's one part of what's going on, and I'd reflect on that. The other part, of course, is your relationship to your partner and the love and the good of that relationship. So maybe sometimes reflect, well, your partner is not the body of the partner, it's all the good that they've done, the good karma that they did, the good things they did to you, the good things they did to other people. And you can remember that, honor that, you can go on to do more good yourself and honor their memory. because that's probably what they would want, isn't it? If they could speak now, they'd want you to make more good karma and practice the Dhamma. So you can determine your mind to do that and honor their memory. And this will help you to deal with any feelings of grief, sadness, or even fear, panic. Do more good. Focus your mind on the good, the wholesome Dhammas, the dana, the sila, the mindfulness, the wise reflection. Just keep doing that and you'll feel better within yourself. It will take time, so you need patience as well, lots and lots of patience. But keep doing that and gradually you'll change the way you look at your partner. You'll look on the goodness of their life more than the physical form which is now gone.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question. Dear Ajahn, how to practice emptiness of seeing? Do we have to contemplate the emptiness of both the I, Rupakanda, and the I consciousness, Namakanda, are empty of self with gratitude?
Yeah, well, you can experiment, can't you? You're seeing now, I assume, maybe you're looking at the screen or something around you. I'm looking around at this hall. But take a moment just to pause, establish mindfulness with the seeing consciousness and examine what's going on. You know, there's the shapes, the colors, the light. Then there's obviously a healthy eye there so that you can see. And actually there's an image going back into your retina and then to your brain. And they say it actually comes in upside down and then your brain kind of writes the image. All of this is going on and it's just a function of the mind. There's nothing yet good or bad, it's just seeing. And if you bring mindfulness to this process, maybe you can witness that. Oh, it's seeing, it's just seeing. But then see how quickly we form an opinion and the perceptions come up. So what you're seeing, you start describing to yourself. You like it, you don't, it's this, it's that. You give names, labels to things. Then we start to create a sense of self based on this labeling, naming, and then reacting. And then we also are picking up feelings. So what you see may be fairly neutral, so neutral feelings, but there may be something you're seeing is bringing out a pleasant feeling. So then there's a change in your mind. There's a desire to want to keep looking. There's an interest, there's a desire. So that's something you can experiment with, observe what's going on sometimes. Or similarly, look at something, deliberately look at something you don't like. Easy, in a monastery, there'll be a piece of rubbish somewhere. You go, oh, look at this rubbish. Just do it as a conscious little experiment, looking at something ugly. It may bring up some small revulsion or unpleasant feeling. But as you become mindful, maybe that revulsion changes and it's just, there's just seeing, there's this image which is an ugly image, but maybe the revulsion and the unpleasant feeling fades now that you're more mindful and deliberately doing it. This is something you have to continuously keep examining, and as your mindfulness improves, you might be more aware of seeing as just seeing, rather than getting caught into the liking and the pleasant feeling, or the dislike and the unpleasant feeling, and all the thoughts about what you're seeing. Just seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching. So in a monastery, you're in an ideal situation to really practice this. At home it's harder, there's perhaps a bit more sense impingement. But I would suggest doing it the same. When you next eat a meal at home, try not to look at anything else. Don't put your phone or the TV on, don't talk to someone if you can. Just eat that meal on your own. and contemplate tasting, smelling, looking, just seeing the food for 5 or 10 minutes while you're eating. See if you can do it in silence. It's just an exercise in being mindful of sense contact. And then other times, just walking along the road. Take it as an exercise, mindful walking, so the feelings of the feet touching the ground, the feeling of your clothes on your body, the feeling of the air. You may be seeing things, but just be aware of just seeing. So take these small moments where you experiment, where you try to be mindful of sense contact, and you may have feelings stimulated, pleasant, unpleasant, but you're not running with those feelings. You're just watching the feelings arise and pass away, and you stick with the sense contact or just seeing. So of course, to another person, you might seem a bit blanked out or weird, but you do it at a time where it's not going to bother you and your relations with other people, so maybe when you're on your own. And you just do it and see more clearly what it's like to just see, just hear. You pick a sense, we've got 6, and focus on that and try to maintain as much mindfulness and equanimity as you can. It's very interesting, you'll learn something this way. And this is, a form of vipassana meditation, just seeing, just hearing, just tasting, and so on.
Sadhu. Lompo. The next question. Good evening, Lompo. I wish to know how to close the perception gap with someone, especially boss at work. If we fail to do so, is it wise and mindful if we choose to leave? Thank you.
Well, maybe. Depends what the problem is, and you have to try to be very honest, clear before you make any important decisions like leaving a job, because jobs are not easy to get and you don't necessarily want to leave a job. So if you're sure that this person is biased towards you, bullying you, obstructing you, causing you trouble, if you tried many things, nothing works, this job is becoming intolerable because the person is making your life difficult, well, yeah, leaving the job may be a valid response. But have you tried everything else first? Have you tried communicating, being patient, looking at it from different angles, checking yourself to see whether you're doing anything that provokes or aggravates the situation? We have to do all that as well. And also look at expectations, like we want everyone to be understanding us when often they can't or they don't. We want everyone to be sympathetic to us when they're not. You have a boss, sometimes your boss ignores you or they dislike you or they criticize you. There's always going to be at least a bit of that in your life, and you have to accept nothing is perfect, no situation is perfect. But is it bearable? Is it manageable? Can you peacefully coexist with this boss, this job? And you set your standards this way. You over having lived your life, experienced your life up to this point, you have an idea what you can cope with, what you can't, what's right and what's wrong. So then you ultimately have to make your decision. If something is really wrong and there's no chance of fixing it, okay, we'll move on, try something different. If things are only partly wrong and part of what's wrong is yourself as well as the other people, well, maybe work on it. Maybe you can still work with it. You have to reflect on this, all of this.
Sadhu. Lompo. The next question. Dear Ajahn, do I have to love my parents? I am trying my best to support them when they are getting older, but my mother never likes her own daughters. Thus, even I have compassion towards them, I don't feel like it.
Probably that means love, isn't it? I don't feel love. Well, you can love the goodness of your parents. If your mum gave birth to you, your mum and dad brought you up, whether you like them or love them or not, they've probably done a lot of good things for you, which you should acknowledge and appreciate, because it's true. Don't ignore that or, take that for granted. The role your parents have played in bringing you into the world and bringing you up is probably a very important role. But now you're older, and you may say, oh, my mother never likes her daughters, my parents don't love me, I don't love them. Okay, you have to accept there may be many differences between you and your parents. You have to accept that. But don't ignore the good of them, and don't let that cloud the relationship. So try to be tolerant of the differences of opinion and so on, and try to be focus and appreciate the good that they've done. This will be healthy for you and for them.
Sadhu. Lompo. The next question. Dear Lompo, when a person we loved passed away and we were hoping to see them again someday, please advise if we were able to meet them one day again. What is life after death? Thank you.
Well, obviously some people don't believe in life after death, but if you do, I think most people can probably accept the fact that even if you were to meet people that you had known before in a previous life, you're not going to remember. 99.9% of people can't remember past lives. You're not going to remember any details of your past life. You will look totally different, they will look totally different, and you'll be just at risk of imagination and speculation taking over the whole time, because you have probably very little way of verifying that you had previously been together. So having considered that, you might say it's not really an issue that matters. Just as this life, living here, sitting here, being here now, you can't remember, I assume most people listening to this cannot remember past lives. You don't know who you met last life, who you were with. It's quite possible you were with some of the people you know right now, good and bad, for better, for worse. But you don't know. You can't remember what they look like, where they live, what happened, all the issues and details you can't remember. So it doesn't matter. Better to focus on the present moment, this life, what you're doing right now, the karma you're making. Try to make good karma, not bad karma. Be mindful in the present as much as possible, because this is where you can improve things. This is where you make your good karma, which will have a good effect in the future. But this is what you know, isn't it? The present moment is what you know. So yes, you may see people that you know this life in the future, but you won't know it. So therefore it's not that important, I think. But that doesn't mean to say this life you should neglect your relationships. Treat people as you want them to treat you. Treat them well. Practice kindness, tolerance, help people where you can. This will develop good relations, and those good relations will come back to help you as well, now and in the future. But as far as knowing someone and being with them again in the same way as they are now, it's never going to be the same, are they? Because life changes. So just accept that. A monk once asked Lumpur Man, said, oh, I met this girl and I'm sure she's my soul mate from past life. I'm so in love with her, can't get out of my head. Must be that we were together last life. Now I met her again and I can't stop thinking about her. Lumpur Man said, no, that's not your soulmate, that is just lust. Lust makes you think someone is your soulmate, but it's just desire. So be careful. Desire comes up, it will convince you of all kinds of things. Oh, we're soulmates. So be careful of your own mind. Don't believe every thought, every feeling. And here endeth today's session.